Madam Chair, distinguished members of the committee, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to lead the Sri Lankan delegation to this dialogue with the Committee on the Right of Persons with Disabilities and to present Sri Lanka's initial report under the Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities. My delegation, both present here in Geneva and joining virtually from Colombo, comprises senior officials from relevant ministries, government institutions, and agencies responsible for the formulation and implementation of policies and programs relating to the rights of persons with disabilities. Sri Lanka recognizes that advancing the right of persons with disabilities is a cross-cutting concern and requires a holistic approach. Accordingly, my delegation includes representatives from Ministry of Rural Development, Social Security and Community Empowerment, Attorney General's Department, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Employment and Tourism, and the officials of the Permanent Mission of Sri Lanka to the United Nations Office and other international organizations in Geneva present here with me today. My members of the delegation joining virtually from Colombo include the Ministry of Women and Child Affairs, Ministry of Health and Mass Media, Ministry of Education, Higher Education and Vocational Education, Ministry of Labour, Ministry of Justice and National Integration, Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Ministry of Public Administration, Provincial Councils and Local Government, Ministry of Defence, Ministry of Housing, Construction and Water Supply, Ministry of Buddhasasana, Religious and Cultural Affairs, Ministry of Transport, Highways and Urban Development, Sri Lanka Police, Department of Census and Statistics, Department of Manpower and Employment, Department of Probation and Child Care, National Child Protection Authority, Disaster Management Center, National Intellectual Property Office of Sri Lanka, Urban Development Authority, Election Commission of Sri Lanka, National Institute of Mental Health, Department of Prisons, Department of Immigration and Immigration, Sri Lanka National Mine Action Center, National Secretariat for Persons with Disabilities, and Department of Social Services. Madam Chair, as a state party to all 9 core human rights conventions, Sri Lanka has demonstrated a steadfast commitment to protecting and promoting human rights through decades of consistent, transparent, and meaningful engagement with the United Nations human rights mechanisms. It is in this spirit that Sri Lanka engaged with the treaty bodies within the framework of voluntary international commitments undertaken by us. The special procedures, the UN Human Rights Council, and the Office of the High Commission for Human Rights. The most recent example of Sri Lanka's engagement with the treaty bodies was our active participation in the initial review under the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearances, CD, in September 2025. Prior to that, in February 2025, Sri Lanka engaged with the Committee on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, for the review of its 9th report under the CEDAW. Sri Lanka welcomes this opportunity to engage with the Committee on the implementation of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The importance we place on our engagement with the UN in this area is signified by the delegation participation in the dialogue headed by me as the subject minister. We approach this review in a spirit of openness, constructive engagement and partnership. We do not consider treaty body reporting as a mere formal obligation. Rather, we see it as a useful opportunity to take stock of progress, to identify gaps, and to strengthen national implementation in consultation with persons with disabilities and their representative organizations. Madam Chair, Sri Lanka ratified the Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities in 2016 and has since remained steadfast in its commitment to aligning its national legislation, policies, programs, and institutional mechanisms with the obligations arising under the Convention. In 2019, Sri Lanka submitted its initial report outlining the measures taken and the progress achieved in promoting and protecting the right of persons with disabilities. In December 2025, we submitted our responses to the committee's list of issues, and the reporting process itself became a valuable opportunity for reflection, enabling us to review national policies, identify areas requiring further attention, and strengthen our engagement with organizations of persons with disabilities and civil society. This process has reinforced our commitment to advancing the rights of persons with disabilities through sustained legislative, administrative, and policy reforms, complemented by targeted social protection and welfare measures. Since the submission of its initial report, Sri Lanka has navigated a series of unprecedented challenges, including the Easter Sunday Day terrorist attack in 2019, the COVID-19 pandemic, and unprecedented socio-economic crisis in 2022, and the socio-economic impacts of Cyclone Dita in 2025. These events place significant demands on our institutions, economy, and people. Yet, despite these extraordinary circumstances, Sri Lanka has remained resilient and steadfast in its commitment to upholding democratic governance and advancing the rights and well-being of all its people, including persons with disabilities. On 23 September 2024, following a fair and peaceful election and a dignified transition of power in keeping with our decade of democratic practices, President Anurakumara Dissanayake was sworn in as Sri Lanka's 9th executive president. The result of the parliamentary election held in November 2024 reflected a collective and unified voice from people of all regions of the country and all ethnicities and religions, supporting with an overwhelming mandate the government's vision for a positive transformation and rejection of divisive policies. In November 2024, Sri Lanka formed one of the most inclusive parliaments in its history, including a record number of women and representatives of different communities. The government is deeply committed to inclusivity, ensuring that persons with disabilities have equal representation in all areas of public life. Translating this into action, Honorable Sugat Wasantha Silla made history as the first person with a disability nominated to the Parliament of Sri Lanka. This was an important initial step in ensuring that the voices of persons with disabilities are heard and their views are incorporated in decision-making processes. This is consistent with the government vision of a thriving nation, a beautiful life, and its commitment to an unimpaired social life, a fair and equitable approach, where persons with disabilities are empowered to live with dignity, equality, independence, and full participation in society. Another important development in the policy spheres was the establishment of the Parliamentary Caucus for Persons with Disabilities on 11 March 2025 under the chairmanship of Honorable Sugat Wasantha Silla. This has strengthened disability inclusive governance and parliamentary oversight in this area. Since its establishment, the caucus has actively engaged with government ministries, disability organizations, education authorities, development partners, and the United Nations system to review national priorities and advance reforms in areas such as inclusive education, employment, accessibility, social protection, and the proposed new disability rights legislation. Madam Chair, the Ministry of Rural Development, Social Security and Community Empowerment, together with the National Secretariat for Persons with Disabilities and the Department of Social Services, continue to implement programs to promote the well-being and empowerment of persons with disabilities. These include livelihood support, housing, education, and medical assistance, financial assistance, vocational support, and provision of assistive devices, particularly targeting persons with disabilities from vulnerable backgrounds. The National Council for Persons with Disabilities established under the Protection of the Right of Person with Disability Act number 28 of 1996 comprises representatives of persons with disabilities. It provides overall guidance and coordination in advancing the rights and welfare of persons with disabilities, while supporting the implementation of disability-inclusive policies and programs through the National Secretariat for Persons with Disabilities. In addition, several national focal ministries, including those responsible for health, education, labor and employment, transport and other related areas, contribute to advancing the inclusion, protection and well-being of persons with disabilities through sector-specific policies, programs and services.
செய்திகளை உடனுக்குடன் தெரிந்து கொள்ள உடனே சப்ஸ்கிரைப் பண்ணுங்க.